Good morning, everybody. So glad that you guys decided to join us for this webinar, last one in this current series that we're doing. As Katie said, my name is Chris Boykin. I'm the Chief Technology Officer here at FutureCom, and wanted to share a little bit with you guys about who we are and what we do, just in case you're not familiar with FutureCom. And so we'll go ahead and get started with that. So who are we exactly? Well, we were established almost 30 years ago now. In 1991, we're headquartered in Grapevine, Texas, in the DFW area, and focusing all over the United States, and as well as some clients that we have across the globe. We focus on cybersecurity, consulting, and cloud, what we call the 3 Cs, which are very prevalent today in this world that we live in. So a little bit about who we are and what we do. This is the slide that I put up right now is what we call our solutions map. You can also find this on our website, and if you're looking at it on our website, you will be able to click down, drill down into each of the icons that you see there and see what kind of stuff that we do, what kind of products that we carry, those kind of things. But you know, as you can tell, this kind of looks like a network diagram. With a whole bunch of different types of solutions, from the time you come into the internet, through your firewalls, all the way across your network down to the endpoints, whether those endpoints are servers or laptops, desktops, or even mobile devices. We have solutions all the way across the board. Cybersecurity solutions, networking solutions, foundational, you know, networking types of things, as well as performance-based solutions. So we kind of run the gamut. As again, I said, we've been in business for almost 30 years, so we have a lot of experience behind us. And we're aware that, you know, most people out there today, you can buy these types of products and solutions from all over different kinds of places. But, you know, there has to be something different between why you might want to buy from FutureCom. And so why is it important? Why is it important that we have services to offer you? And that is our big differentiator. We have consulting and professional services to come out and help you guys in any type of solution that you may need for your business. And one of the reasons why that's important is because of the complexity. You know, it's not slowing down. I mean, you've got people that are out there, you know, the users, especially in today's world with the COVID crisis, users are dispersed everywhere, right? Whereas before, the majority of your people worked out of a central office somewhere, and you had a few road warriors that carried laptops. Now, in this unprecedented time, people are working from home, they're working from coffee shops, they're working from vacation, they're all over the place. And so how do you control those users? How do you keep the data and things like that secure as it proliferates across multiple different platforms, whether it's all the way on the end user's device or it's sitting out there in the cloud? We're letting users use their own devices now, especially during this time. People are using their home computers. People are using, you know, their home phones and things like that. And so there's just so much ways that the hackers and the bad guys can try to find your data and misuse it. And so this complexity of how do we secure this? How do we stay in a market that is so competitive and secure our data? The other piece about this is having the talent on your staff. And this is difficult because if you look at the statistics that you see there up on the screen, most of the companies out there feel like they are understaffed when it comes to cybersecurity. So, you know, you have a small enough already IT department, and within that IT department, typically you have a few people focused on security. And at this point, I mean, there's still over 50% of the customers out there and the clients that we work with are telling us they don't have enough staff for this. You know, and the risk is so high because there's a shortfall in the professionals that know how to do this. And even when they're trying to fulfill these positions, when they're trying to fill these positions there, it's taken them 3 to 6 months to even find good talent. So there is a shortage that's out there, and it's supposed to just get worse. And if you listen to Gartner and some of the other studies that are put out there by IC Squared, things like that, they're saying that in just a couple more years from now, that there'll be over 2 million jobs out there that can't be filled. right? Because just the labor force is not available. And you know, this is difficult because if we don't have the people to help secure our data, then we rely 100% on the technology. And as we know, technology can fail, so you have to have the humans behind it to be able to manage this and be able to configure it properly, and to be able to make sure that the solution is working the way it's supposed to do, and that the vendors that are providing these solutions are living up to their promises on how they secure networks. So we can never do this job without the people. And right now, there's a huge labor shortage. According to Gartner, there's a negative unemployment rate for cybersecurity and professionals. Negative unemployment rate, meaning that there are more jobs available than there are people to fill them. So even if the talent was good talent, we don't even have talent at all right now. So this is a huge issue, and why you may need to look at a company like FutureCom, who on our staff has years and years of experience in cybersecurity. Another thing that you have to think about is just the challenge that's out there with all of these things together. Increased complexity, time is definitely of the essence, right? And with all these resource constraints that we've talked about, when all these factors come into play, it's compounded that the already growing shortfall in labor. There is a need for efficiency in order to ensure that our businesses can operate within some kind of acceptable level of risk. But simply put, organizations just need to resolve more risk, and they got to do it faster, and they got to do it with fewer resources. And that is a huge challenge for today. So this is where we come in as FutureCom. So we're not only a company that can sell you the best products on the market, like F5 that we're just going to be talking to you today. We also provide these professional services, these consulting services. We have general services like doing things like vulnerability management, or doing assessments or audits, doing staff augmentation to help fill in the gaps whenever you're trying to hire somebody, or fill it in completely for you if you just want to outsource some of that work. We can do penetration testing, internal audits, all kinds of things like that. But we also do implementation of the products that you commonly may find in your networks. And so you can see that. I'm not going to walk through every bullet point on this, but you can see on this sheet, there's a lot of things that we bring to the table, a lot of stuff that FutureCom has to offer. So just to drill in just a little bit deeper on that, you know, our consulting services for networking or cybersecurity, they include things like what you're seeing on your screen here. And I know that not everybody needs this right off the bat, but at some time when you're outside of just implementing on projects, right, there is times when you are going to need to call on outside people just for the expertise of knowing best practices. These are things that we keep up with on a regular basis because that is what we have to do. I run a staff. My job here as CTO is I have a staff full of consulting engineers that know how to design and architect networks, security, you know, firewalling, IPS, all of these kind of things, right? We go into customer who have already had this stuff implemented for a while and do things that we call a health check, where we double check the configuration, make sure that no mistakes have been made, see if they're optimized in how their traffic's flowing, the ability to go in there and to help our customers take advantage of the products that they've already spent money on, by maybe making these separate products talk to each other. Many of the products that you find on the market today have communication capabilities between themselves with what's called APIs. And we find that a lot of our customers don't even realize that, or they don't know how to get those products and solutions talking to each other. So this is where we can come in as FutureCom and do our services and allow those products to be better used, get you more bang for your buck without having to spend a whole lot of more money on the next point solution that's out there. And of course, we do things like surveys and assessments, as I've brought up before. We also have a little bit of managed services that we bring to the table. One of our biggest ones that we have is what we call our human security program. And this is something that basically is testing and securing your humans. So we do things like phishing and vishing or voice phishing. And then we provide security awareness training through some of our partners, solutions that are out there with lots of different choices on how that training is delivered. And then we track all of that. And what we do, our end goal is to help reduce the risk factor of the humans themselves, which have time and time again been proven to be one of our biggest faults, is the human, the user on the other side of the keyboard. That's where the majority of the attacks are happening. That's where the majority of the breaches enter in, is through a bad email where somebody clicks a link or opens an attachment or gives away their username and password unknowingly. And then the next thing you know, you're on the 5 o'clock news. And for us, this is something that we do on a regular basis for a lot of our clients. And we have seen double digit, 50% or above people falling for this kind of trap, go down to single digit, 1, 2, 3% of the people have an issue. So this is one of our biggest managed services programs. And then of course we offer other managed services like email security, endpoint security, all of these things that if you need help, just because you're short staffed, like what we talked about before, then this is something that you might want to look into, is outsourcing this to us. And if you just need some help, that last bullet that's on this slide here is what we call our co-managed security solutions. And this is where we can come alongside of you and work as a team together, where you don't have to fully outsource it, but you can outsource the either the most difficult parts or the most mundane parts that you just don't want to spend the daily activity work on. And we can work side by side with you guys to keep your data secure. So that's enough about FutureCom. We've got a great guest this morning that want to introduce to you. This is a company called F5. Several of you guys who are on the call, I've noticed already are F5 customers, and then there's others out there that may not be using it or may never even have heard of it. So at this point, what I want to do is I'm going to turn over the reins to Mr. Corey Marshall. He is the director and senior security architect at F5. And I'm going to turn that over to him, and he's going to tell you a little bit about what they can do to help keep your data secure. Corey?
Thank you. Thank you very much, sir. And thank you for inviting us to your forum to participate in the conversation with your customers. Let me go ahead and start sharing here. So again, my name is Corey Marshall. I'm the director and senior security solution architect for F5 Networks North America. And today we're going to speak about a recent acquisition of F5, a fantastic new addition to our solutions portfolio, and that is Shape Security. Many of you have probably heard of Shape in the marketplace, and probably some of you have some of your children that are interested in Shape if they're looking at information security careers or data science and AI machine learning. Shape is one of the top names out there in terms of employers, and now it is part of F5. And let's talk a little bit about the history of why F5 acquired Shape Security, right? And this is primarily due to the story that no one tells. So for a long time, F5 has been the go-to solution for sitting in front of applications and providing application services such as load balancing, such as TLS termination, such as web application security, targeting the exploits against applications. But the full story no one tells is in the business value. Why do we protect applications? We need to move beyond the infrastructure and into the business and the transactions. And the story that no one tells is that attackers primarily operate in 3 phases. So it's not so much that an attacker is looking to exploit the application itself. Sometimes they're looking to extract value. And so the way in which they do this would be, number one, harvest credentials, either buying lead credentials from any number of data breaches, shameless plug to Equifax on that. And, through harvesting of credentials via phishing or man-in-the-browser attacks. And then moving into a phase 2 is validating those credentials. And how do they do that? They leverage botnets. They leverage automation to be able to execute those transactions, validate the credentials that they have, and then move into the extraction of value, money, goods, access, services, other information that can be turned into value, such as intellectual property or medical records. And in the market space, each one of these areas was targeted by a different vertically integrated ecosystem. And what we're here to say with F5 is that that is no longer necessary. F5 and Shape Solutions together provide a holistic fraud prevention platform. So let's get beyond the concept of just thinking about bots and realize that anti-bot and anti-automation or bot wall solutions are just one piece of the puzzle. And due to the technology we're able to bring to the market, we've been called upon by the who's who in the most attacked consumer facing industries in the market. So this is 9 of the top 12 US banks, 2 of the 3 top telcos, 4 of the 7 top global airlines, 2 of the top 3 government agencies. And with this, we're processing today over 200 million legitimate human transactions per day, over 250 million mobile devices that are leveraging applications protected by Shape, and we're mitigating billions of non-human transactions daily. Right, so think about Shape the next time you scan your phone at the Starbucks kiosk to buy your coffee. There's technology behind that preventing your account from being taken over or your points stolen. And so, as part of this, our mission statement, number 1, let's prevent the abuse and exploitation of the intended functionality of the application, but let's do that without adding friction to the user experience, right? And if you've ever interacted with some sites, we'll go into examples of how that impacts your business. And the way that Shape operates is take a look at the threat landscape and the evolution of bad actors. So start at the bottom, right, where you're looking at low skill, low resourced attackers moving into professional automation. They're more advanced. They're possibly able to extract some value, and then moving into the top tier of the pyramid, which is scaled manual attacks. So this is leveraging human resources. They're leveraging more advanced tools such as machine learning from the attacker perspective. They are leveraging human click farms and foreign locales that they're leveraging to execute their attacks. So as you evolve through these different mitigation tiers, it is important to drive an outcome. It's not enough just to target an individual tier on the pyramid. We want to deliver outcomes as a service. So this is precisely what Shape provides: the ability to have a managed service that's going to provide continuous protection via the run and maintain operations, threat analysis and reporting, through threat research, and through a proactive expert security operations center that becomes an extension of your team. And the way in which we drive this outcome as a service is in an architecture that can be deployed essentially anywhere where my applications live. So the primary architecture from a high level is that there's a piece of JavaScript and there's an SDK that are added to the applications. That traffic, either via CDN or via load balancer, is forwarded into what we call our shapeshifter elements. And these are the components that analyze the telemetry and the bad transactions in real time. And on the back end, we return that traffic through your data plane in order to protect your web, mobile, and API channels as well. Right. And so again, this is a 30,000 foot view in terms of the architecture, but if you really needed to dig in deeper, there are additional options available. So there's cloud appliances, which most of our customers use, but then there's inline on-prem detection as well. It all depends on where your applications live and what are your requirements from a data plane perspective. Okay. So going back to friction. Friction is the enemy of you being able to execute your business effectively, right? It's going to increase user frustration, going to decrease efficiency, and frankly, it's going to cost you money over time. And so we do not introduce friction via knowledge-based authentication or CAPTCHA. Every time my wife gets a CAPTCHA on a page, she calls me over to solve it because she can't read the thing. But then again, she's blind, so take that with a grain of salt. But think about the challenge of not or doing frictionless controls without needing a CAPTCHA, right? And why do people go there? Because the scale of the challenge is huge. And so organizations are oftentimes just trying to slow the attackers down, right? So if you look at this is an example from a real customer where they were seeing 1.4 million login requests against the login endpoint every hour. And those were coming from 80,000 different IP addresses, 3.7 or almost 4K ASNs, and across a variety of user agents, right? And so if I had a human that needed to target this, we'd just be playing whack-a-mole. You would never catch up, and the attackers, in terms of success rate, would not really be impacted by your whack-a-mole techniques, which is, some people go and create a signature, and then the attackers, they change tactics. So let's give an example of that with Shape and with our machine learning engine, what we see. So, prior to a customer having Shape in place, we see a certain level of automation, and we see a certain level of human traffic. Notice the diurnal pattern, right? So, humans, sleep at night, they're awake during the day. So we'll see a pretty consistent sine wave, if you will. And so implementing Shape, the first thing that we do is we turn on Shape on the site using the telemetry, either in band or out of band. And so we're monitoring and looking at the patterns of access on the site. And so you see in the yellow that we've identified an automation, and then we go to mitigation, and that's where you start seeing the red. And so at some point, the attackers are going to change tactics. So you'll see that the attackers start to retool, right? They'll retool and try different tactics again, but they're being mitigated, right? And so the way this works is through various stages. So, first stage mitigation, all of the collected machine intelligence that we've learned previously can be applied into your existing traffic flows. And then stage 2 is where if you have an application that is very unique to your environment, stage 2 is looking at very specific, very business-driven indicators of fraud, indicators of abuse, and applying those on your traffic as well. Okay. So once Shape comes in and is implemented on your application, generally what we see is about 70% of attackers, they give up, right? About 20% persist. Right, they're not able to circumvent the stage 1 countermeasures, but they persist anyway because either they don't have proper monitoring, or they just think that by persisting and or ramping up, that you'll eventually remove the controls out of fear that you were blocking something legitimate. And then about 6.5–7% they'll actually retool. Right, these are your highly motivated, technically sophisticated attackers. You'll see this in terms of your financial aggregators. Some of those darling fintechs that Wall Street loves are some of the biggest offenders of these type of attacks, and they're highly motivated, and they're incented to try to leverage automation against their sites because they are reselling the access to that information through their platform. And so once we get to the highly motivated attacks, this is where we start moving into stage 2 mitigations, the stage 2 post-transaction intelligence, such that we can apply long-term efficacy to drive outcomes as a service. So we see here customer initial deployment 2016, 91% of their login activity was by non-humans. 2 years later, they're at 1% of login attempts by non-humans. So mitigation options, right? There are a variety of flexible options that can be taken inline and out of band. So when we look at our different traffic types, good bots, content scrapers, password tools, application analysis service, we can apply different contextual mitigation options. So whitelisting, great listing of those different traffic sources, what we call declaration of requests, if you will, such that the back end receives additional contextual data regarding those requests in line, and the application teams and the business are able to make those decisions. So if they want to block, redirect, if they want to deceive the attacker, if they just want to throttle or flag those requests into their existing fraud tools, all of those are capabilities for mitigation. And so all of the requests and all the intelligence, what's actually happening on the site can be visualized in real time with role-based access to a cloud UI, a cloud dashboard, which shows all of the activity, the methods, response code, the automation type, and is able to dig in very granularly into all of the requests. In addition, if you don't want to leverage or you want to co-leverage information from Shape into your existing reporting ecosystem, that can be leveraged via Ceph data for your SIEM integration. So, for example, Ceph data packages sent off in X3, and then your SIEM solution pulling that in from S3, and that's an example flow. All right, so let's dig into relevant use case. So let's address the funnel, right? So we want to go from less specific to more specific, from less sophisticated to more sophisticated, or from lower business value into more business value. And this is where we kind of have a 3-tiered architecture. So first one, enterprise defense. So this is where we're going to identify and mitigate unwanted traffic. Number 2 is safe. This is where we're getting to identifying and mitigating fraudulent human behavior. And then recognize. Recognize is all about creating a friction-free user experience and increasing revenue, right? A key word, increasing revenue. There's not a lot of security solutions on the market that can be directly correlated back to increasing revenue. And so to give you a view into this, the concept of going back to the story no one tells is having a cross-functional convergent platform, the very opposite of what my wife says I am. And so first, we want to start with detecting and mitigating bot traffic. Let's eliminate the synthetic transactions. And typically across industries, that's 60 to 90% of the traffic. Your CISO, cybersecurity, is going to be interested in this because this is what he's responsible for. So he is looking at, how do I save money on infrastructure costs or OpEx? How do I reduce the cost or eliminate the impact of a site outage? Remember the scale that we were looking at. So if I'm able to mitigate all the unwanted automation, I can spend less money on infrastructure. I can give performance back to the business, back to the app teams. So at the next tier, detect and mitigate those human fraudsters, right? This is the next level where I am able to have higher fidelity data because I've moved beyond the synthetic transactions. So your CRO or your head of fraud is looking at, how do I save money on fraud losses, thereby increasing my profit margins? And then we get down into the good customers. So we've eliminated synthetic transactions. We've eliminated the human fraudsters. And now we want to target the good customers, meaning that, can I smooth their user experience? Can I not force them through a password reset workflow when I know it's that user? For example, can I prevent that user from having to do multi-factor authentication? So if I'm able to prevent them from abandoning their transaction, abandoning their shopping cart, or able to execute their transactions more smoothly while reducing the risk, that's a big win because I'm able to increase my customer loyalty and thereby increase revenue. Okay. And so let's dive in to how detection works. How do we do all this? And so first thing, we leverage signals from 3 primary areas to identify illegitimate traffic. So one, the environment. So this is the device, the browser, the individual details or metadata about that specific device or that specific browser. Then we look at behavior. So this is looking at the patterns of use, right? That does this match up to a human? Does this match up to a fraudster, or does this match up to a bot? And then we also look at network as well, right? So oftentimes organizations that are doing security controls forget about some of the information that can be garnered from some of the network data. So looking at the ranges, looking at the AS, looking at the looking at the AS origins, looking at the organization names, how recently they were registered. All these things taken together are things only a machine learning engine can take into account and do that in real time. And so, give an example of browser environment signals for both web and mobile. Via JS telemetry, we're looking at plugins, looking at the fonts, looking at the canvas, looking at the screen size, looking at additional signals as well. And an example of advanced signal may be that Chrome or Firefox or Edge may render an emoji in a different way, right? So if you look at, sorry about that. So if you look at, for example, you type in, :D on the different platforms, you get a completely different emoji, right? And so this is a means of which we're collecting environment signals, and we're matching that up to what's been told to the application as a source of truth. Mobile environment signals. So this is where the mobile SDK is leveraging information that we know about the device: the screen resolution, the brightness, the battery information, right? Such as temperature, capacity, the technology, physical sensor data, looking at altitude, orientation, gyroscope. And so, we're able to take this information across 200 million devices, and we're able to develop a very good pattern of usage for different applications, such that if you're falling outside the scope, or you're an outlier in terms of the way in which this application and its environment is accessing a resource, we're able to spot that very quickly. And then behavior signals, right? So via the JavaScript and SDK telemetry, we're able to look at patterns of human behavior, or patterns of behavior that don't match or are impossible for a human to execute. So maybe the first hash value taken is the key up, key down events, the arc of the mouse movement, for example, how quickly the keystrokes happen. So 11 keystrokes in 30 milliseconds, for example. Taking all of these things into context to understand if this is a bot. So if you look at the bottom one, we see the combination of the keystrokes, the combination of the mouse movement in a very non-human fashion, and we're able to draw conclusions from that. Yeah, and so also, in addition to the behavior signals, let's dig into the network signals a little bit. And so we'll look at known true bad client IP. So as we know, IPs are very disposable, but they are an indicator, right? They're one thing that we want to take into account when we're looking at, is this a malicious transaction? So, threat actors or campaigns, they can be profiled by, are they foreign or bulletproof hosting services? Are you having access from AWS, GCP, or Azure, for example, from a VDI perspective? Or are we dealing with residential ISPs, or are we dealing with known bad ASNs? They're just ASNs where they're primarily focused on malicious activity, and those are oftentimes, again, a clear indicator that this is not a legitimate transaction. Right. So bringing these together, right? Now I'm able to perform a full end-to-end transactional analysis and deterministic detection, meaning that we're going to evaluate each transaction individually, regardless of what came before, and we're able to very quickly spot, hey, here's a malware-infected client, right? And they move to transfer money via Zelle, and we can prevent these type of attacks, right? So the way in which we work on the back end, some information about the platform and about our SOC, is that the stage one mitigation. So the stage one mitigation is the inline real-time analysis that is driven from the stage 2 offline analysis. So using massive data sets, using the security operations center and the tactics team, we're able to generate new detection logic and new countermeasures and apply that to the real-time controls. So, this is where in stage 2, the data scientists and supervised, unsupervised machine learning are informing the stage 1 detection. Okay. So, building upon that, we talked about, the value in the ecosystem is driving towards the business, and there's a new solution set that's part of Shape. As we've matured the machine learning practice, we're able to go a little bit deeper and look at who, what, and how an attacker from an individual user perspective would behave versus a legitimate user, right? So this is going beyond automation, going beyond synthetic transactions, looking at user journeys, garnering additional user insights with how they interact with the page, and additional environment insights. So we'll show you some examples of that. So bringing these things together, first thing is that SAFE is targeting fraud in a closed loop ecosystem. So I know some of you on the call may be banks or financial institutions, and you almost certainly have a fraud file. And so we want to take that fraud file and we want to profile that with using the ML platform to determine whether or not what are those outliers, for example. So for example, logs with multiple usernames. So 9% of good users, 95% of fraudulent users, and we've seen that we have a user that's or an entity that's logged in with more than 3 usernames in the past month, right? And so we see this is manual fraud versus non-manual fraud transactions, and we can profile these based upon the number of unique usernames over time, and look and dig a little bit deeper into the user behavior. So, for example, SAFE will look at things like I'm looking at copy paste of the email address, the autofill the email address, the average time between keystrokes, the time on the page. When we look at fraud versus non-fraud, we see that the statistics here are way off, right? So it's a very clear profile of fraudulent behavior in the application. And what that allows us to do is interdict at key moments of an attacker lifecycle. So we're watching them when they first land on the page. We're watching them as they're navigating, but when they're going to execute a transaction, say against the rewards point system, or execute a money transfer or a payment transaction, we're able to quickly mitigate those events. So again, back to the story full story no one told, is that at each step there is a Shape solution, and all of these solutions work together in a common platform, a common delivery mechanism to target the end-to-end attack ecosystem. Right. So in order to deploy this, right, there's some different options. So there's one, do it yourself. Right. So this is where if you have a large pool of resources and expertise, and then there's third party security platforms as a service. This is for organizations that may have a DevOps environment, or they have apps that are constantly changing. So they want to have a platform that's a little more agile, but at the same time, their engineering resources aren't necessarily dedicated towards running and operating in infrastructure. And then we go into managed security services, right? And so these are usually, you're focused on your business first, and you're not able to necessarily manage the entire solution stack yourself. And you're oftentimes looking at cloud or multi-cloud solutions. And this is where we come in with Silverline and Shape. So Silverline's been around for a number of years already, and Silverline consists of 200 plus security experts. We're operating in 130 countries across 48 verticals. We're protecting over 15,000 sites. Our customer sat is proven, and Silverline previously focused on denial of service mitigation, WAF protection, API protection, and some bot mitigation. But moving beyond that, we now have the capability of also running Shape. So this is, evolving a managed security services into the fraud ecosystem, where we're able to validate good customers, able to prevent, criminals and malicious actors such as scrapers, scalpers, and aggregators from accessing the application, all in the context of a managed service. Right? So I'll stop right there and open it up for questions.
Thank you, Corey. So let me go ahead. The first question is, I have a web application firewall. Do I need Shape, or does the Shape solution replace my web application firewall?
Absolutely. So your web application firewall is going to protect your applications from exploitation, and Shape is going to target automation, fraud, and abuse. So absolutely, keep your web application firewall, because they're targeting two different things.
Perfect, thank you. Our next question here is, what does the ongoing management of Shape look like? What kind of expertise do I need in-house to effectively deploy and operate it?
Absolutely, that is a great question. So Shape, again, is a fully managed service. So either via an on-prem option or in off-prem option. So an on-prem option, all you have to do is deploy and rack and stack the appliances themselves. But all the hosted architecture, it's all about sending the appropriate flows into Shape. So Shape doesn't look at the entirety of the application. We want to look at interesting traffic workflows. So account login, account create, password reset, transactions. These are the things that we want to target with Shape, such that we're adding no friction to the user experience while delivering the protection. So it's a managed service and bespoke for every customer, but leveraging the network effect, leveraging the community, and driving those results.
Wonderfully answered, thank you. I do have another one here for you, Corey. Please elaborate on reCAPTCHA. I've been using it to address some of the challenges you describe. How does Shape replace or compare to that?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're able to identify the via signals from the client side behavior and network. We're able to identify with very high fidelity whether or not this was a bot, was it fraudster, for example. And if you look at Capture, for example, Google, you leveraging the same machine learning engine that they sell via GCP, was able to solve CAPTCHAs at over a 90% rate, right? Versus and also solve KBA solutions over a 90% rate versus humans that can only do it 30% of the time, right? And so we want to leverage an more advanced signal set to be able to identify those attackers without slowing down the user experience. And so what we replace is the ability to seamlessly inline identify and mitigate those the bots and attackers as appropriate. So, and going back to the original question, that would replace your reCAPTCHA, yes.
Perfect. Here's another one for you. How is it managed? Is it a central management console?
Yep, we have a central management console that we do provide the customers to, and so you have the SOC engineers who are primarily making in any of the changes that need to be made and enforcing new attack techniques. So again, very much a managed service. The customer doesn't have to do much, but you have visibility and insights into the data in the dashboard.
So I think that we've answered all the questions. Chris or Corey, do either of you have any final thoughts or last words?
Yeah, last words is that the proof is in the pudding, right? As I often like to say. Now, at home, my pudding is terrible, but the Shape has allowed us to move into new areas of again, how do we drive the outcome? How do we drive the business value? And so, the proof being in the pudding is that it's very easy to evaluate. We can do a measure of reporting on, what is your existing synthetic transaction situation look like without going in line with JavaScript as a phase one, and then as a phase two, we can go in line with JavaScript, and we're able to have better signals from the client side, and at some point, if you like what you see, go into mitigation, and it's very easy to try out. We have, again, cloud options. We have managed service offering from a data plane perspective, and we have again offline tools as well.
Thank you. That's a great summary. I actually did have another question come in, if you don't mind. It says, your example showed great success over 2 years. What is the normal tuning time frame to demonstrate value to management, like ROI?
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll usually monitor the applications for a week or so before we go into mitigation. But I can tell you that we're oftentimes called into incident response scenarios. So the ROI can be seen immediately under the right circumstances.
Perfect. That's great to hear. So I think that we are good on the questions. I want to thank Chris and Corey for their time today and for the information. I know it was a lot of new material for a lot of you folks that are on the call. So if you have additional questions that come up, then feel free to reach out to us, your account manager, or any of the contacts listed on the screen right now. We've got a couple of contacts from F5 as well as our customer care team. And I just want to let y'all know this is the final webinar in our Learn and Lunch series, but we will be starting a new series up in August that is titled Back to School Web Series. It'll run from August through October, and we will focus on educational information, product demos, and more. Each attendee will receive 1 CPE credit for every session they attend. And additionally, there'll be new prizes for attending, ranging from Amazon or Apple gift cards to Warby Parker gift certificates. So kind of a fun, exciting new series. To sign up for that, you can see it on our website or LinkedIn page, or you can reach out to your account manager, and we can get you signed up for the next series. And finally, as an added bonus from our session today, in addition to receiving your DoorDash gift card for lunch, each attendee will be placed into a raffle drawing for an F5 Shape Security branded TUMI wallet. So we're going to put all of everybody's names into a random generator and pull a winner, and that winner will be notified via their registered email address. So one of you lucky winners will have a new TUMI wallet after today. And I think, one more check, yep, I think we are all good to go. So again, thanks everybody for attending. Thanks Corey and Chris. And y'all just stay safe out there, stay secure, stay home, and have a great lunch.